So if we go and open this up right here, we can see we have under the foot controller, which is this right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 different groups. Within the bottom 3 groups, we have little what is called toe tip IK, ball IK, and hip and ankle IK. And these are essentially IK handles, inverse kinematic handles that allow us to kind of rotate each one of the joints around relatively easily. So that's what we're going to be working on today. Additionally, for this assignment, you will be required to rig the rest of this model. Since we've already done a fair amount of work with the ribbon, it might make sense to go ahead and use a ribbon spine to get the neck to move around properly. You also know how to make an eyeball point at a targeter, so we could go ahead and do that as well. And he has a mouth, so we could go ahead and put a mouth control in there. You'll notice that he has a little tail on the end. You know, maybe have some tail controls on there so he can waggle his butt. That'd be kind of nice. And then we have individual controls. We have root, spine controls, neck control, feet controls, a placement controller, and then finally a world controller. Okay? Oh, and then a head controller too. So we've got to make sure we have all that in there. Alrighty? This will be due next week. So, sound good? Okay. You have any questions about the assignment? What I'm asking for? Okay. All right. So the file that you guys will be working with is going to be footloose.mb. That's going to be under the demo projects. If you open it up, you'll see that it is ready to go. And this is it right here. So what's the first thing I got to do to a mesh when I'm starting to rig it? Yep. So let's go and select everything. Go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. Go to Edit, delete all by type, History. All right. What's the next thing I want to do for my meshes? Does anyone? We will have layers, but we want to make sure that we're naming everything properly. So right now this is just P cube 1. So what would this be called? Body mesh? Yeah, honestly, any of those will work just as long as we keep it consistent. You got a name? Huh? Fred? Fred body? What's this going to be? Fred I what? Mesh. And I think that's honestly all the mesh we got. Just 2 pieces. All right, let's go ahead and select both of these. We're going to go ahead and make ourselves display layer. What's this going to be called? Okay. And then what do I need to have for my meshes in the outliner? Group. So I do have a group actually already. Name that Geo Group. Go and make a character group right here. Okay. All right, let's go and start throwing in some joints. I'm going to drop into my side view. I'm going to go and template my display layer. And let's go and make a couple of joints. What's the first one I'm probably going to need to make? Root, exactly. So the root needs to go basically in the center of kind of the groin area. So for him, that's going to be like right here, like right in between the hips. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And actually, let's make it a chain. So let's do one right here. And then let's do the tail joints. Tail joint base. Ricardo, you feeling all right today? Yeah? What's the last one going to be called? Okay. All right, and let's go ahead and do the. So I could either just do some FK joints for the spine, or I could run a ribbon all the way from basically the root all the way up through the neck. Which I might do that, so I'll come back to that later. Since we're working on the legs, we'll focus on that today. So let's go over into a front view. So I'm gonna go ahead and do let's do this. I'm going to do my groin joint, which is gonna be right here. And then I'm going to go over to, which side is this? Yeah, I'll do this one right here. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay. So I'm going to go groin to hip to knee and then down to the ankle. So basically just like that. I'll take this guy, move him up. Take this one, move him back. And then I'm going to do another joint right here where the ball's going to be. And then I'm going to have a toe tip joint right there. Okay? Yeah.
In the pivot point at the center, is it possible to like have two directions going off from one point, or it just has to be another line of joints?
You're talking about it splitting?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can split. Okay. So, a couple things I need to fix real quick with this. Actually, let's move that ankle up a little bit. So these joints are basically my template. They're not going to be the actual joints I'm going to use to rig, but I'm using this to be my placers. Because what I'm going to do is trace out my joints again so I can have proper rotation orientations. Because if you look at each one of these joints, you'll see like the little axes. These are basically the rotation axes for each individual joint, and they need to be you need to be sure that these guys are actually pointing down the joint chain. So one way we can do that is we can just retrace out the joint chain, and that'll basically give us exactly what we're wanting. But we can also use a tool to do that as well. It's going to be the Orient joint tool. And so with this tool, we can actually go in and say, I want the primary axis to be the X. So that's going to be the axis that will be pointing down the joint chain. And then I want my secondary axis, which is going to be the up axis, to be Y. So we can tell it to orient that way. And you'll see that it actually goes through and rotates each one of the joints. But sometimes that doesn't do exactly what we want. So let me show you what I mean by tracing. So I'm going to hold down V with the joint tool, and then basically just go in and snap. And it'll give us pretty much the same thing, but you'll see it's a little bit rotated in some of these joints, and so it's actually giving us proper rotational axes, which is what we want. So you see it's a little bit different there. Whereas here, if I go and click on this guy, it's just pointing forward, which is not what we want. And this is from doing the Orient joint. Okay. So generally when I'm rigging things that are kind of complex in their shape, and if it's just a spine, it's not a big deal. But if you're doing, say, like a leg or an arm, I usually will go in, place a bunch of joints wherever I want them, and then I'll go through and trace them so then I can get proper orientations. Now the reason why we want proper orientations is so when we do our connections for the reverse foot, the attributes that we put into the foot controller are going to be connected to, say, rotations along an X, Y, or Z axis. And so if we have an X axis that's like pointing off, to like one side, it's not going to give us what we really want. It's not going to give us the direction that it should be rotating. And so by going in and retracing it, then it's going to give us something that's a bit more logical. Because if it's going to be if we have an X-axis that's pointing down the joint chain, and we connect something like a controller to the X-axis of that joint, it's going to give us a rotation that's going to be what we probably should be estimating, instead of going off like some weird diagonal angle. Kind of a weird explanation, but you'll see what I mean when we get to the connection editor portion. Okay, so anyway, once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and take the first joint chain, delete it. We're going to go and take this one, the new one, and I'm going to go ahead and rename all these. Make sure you put in which side of the body this is going to be on. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go and click on this hip joint. We're actually going to tell the skeleton to mirror over. So I'm going to go to skeleton, mirror joints. And we're going to tell it when it mirrors, it's going to search for the word left and replace it with right. It's going to be mirroring across, what axis do we need to mirror across? What plane should we probably be going from?
Positive x to negative x.
Yeah, positive x to negative x. And then if we put a plane right down the center of his body, what would that plane be? Be z and y. Yeah. So zy, and then, yeah. So there we go. I'm going to click on mirror. Mirrors it across. And it's going to be the child of the groin joint. So we're good to go there. And there you go. It doesn't really, okay, so orientation-wise, the groin joint's never going to move for us. Ideally, I would like to have this to have orientations that are basically reset to the world. So you could go in and reorient this joint if you wanted to, but it's never going to move, so it doesn't really matter, to be honest. So we're just going to leave that as it is. But we're going to make sure everything else is nice and mirrored. Looks good. X-axis is still going down the joint chain. So we're good. All right, I'm going to go and take the groin, go up to root, parent. So there we go. And I'm ready to go and start with our IK. Any questions so far? No? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go under skeleton, create IK handle. And so let's talk about what we're going to be doing with this. So the IK handle is basically going to give us a connection from one joint to another joint further down the chain. And it's going to allow us to influence any intermediary joints. So let me go ahead and give you an example real quick. Okay. So it's going to make, it's going to really kind of depend on what we want to do with that joint chain, depending on which selections we make right here in the IK handle tool. So in the tool settings, we have what's called the current solver, rotate plane, or single chain. And so if we do a single chain, we will click here up at the top for the parent joint. Actually, I'm sorry, we'll go here to there. And you're going to get this little handle thing that kind of pops up. It's kind of hard to see. Let me select it. Okay. So it almost kind of looks like a bow. You see this little string that goes from the parent joint to the child joint? So if we click on this little handle right here, you'll see if we click and move this, we can move the leg. So that's pretty useful. Huh? Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. So we can use that. Now we also have an option for changing this over to the rotate plane solver. So that was single chain we were using. And then we can do rotate plane. Okay. It works exactly the same way, but then you notice that we have this little arrow right here. You guys see that? So if I go over to the IK handle, the rotate plane essentially gives us a couple of different attributes. So you'll see where it says offset, roll, and twist. So if I go over to here, we don't actually have the same ability that we do with the single chain. So if I go back, sorry, let's go to here. Okay. So with this one, we can actually take the twist, we can actually kind of rotate the chain around like it's got an elbow. And then we can also parent this using the pole vector constraint. So if we create just an object to constrain it to, you'll see it goes from the little arrow right here and then allows us to move that joint chain around. Can you guys see that? Yeah? Okay. So let's go ahead and set that up on here. So what I'm going to do is go back to the IK. I'm actually going to keep it on a rotate plane solver because what we need is for this to actually give us some sort of control over the knee. So I'm going to go from ankle to hip. Got that right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back to that tool, and I'm going to switch it over to single chain. Okay? And that's going to go from ball of the foot to the ankle. And then we're going to do another one that's, again, single chain from the tip of the toe to the ball. Okay? So we have two single chain IK handles we just created and one rotate plane IK handle. Okay? So we have the rotate plane is going from hip to ankle, and then the other two are going from ankle to the ball, and then from ball to the tip of the toe. Okay? Any questions on that?
Does it matter which one you select first for this one?
It's going to be child parent. So basically the lower extremity to the upper. All right, let's go ahead and start naming these. Get rid of these two. All right, Fred, IK, ankle. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and actually start grouping these guys. So let's talk about the basically the way that we're going to need to group them. So the layout is going to be this. The hip, ankle, IK is going to be grouped by itself. We're going to actually be basically just grouping all three of these to themselves, but then we're going to put the toe tip and the heel pivot into a group together. Okay? And then also the the ball, the toe tip are both going to be grouped to themselves. The toe tip is going to be grouped under the heel, and then the heel peel and the heel pivot are going to be grouped together as well. So that's basically just the map we're following here. So let's go ahead and group this guy. Group, group, group. Okay. So we're going to go and take both of these two. So toe tip and ankle. Group these two together. And we're going to actually take the ball right here. And so we're going to grab that group and we're going to name that toe tap group. And then the toe tip, actually I'm sorry, this is going to be heel peel group. The one on the toe tip is going to be called toe tap. Okay. So what we'll do is go ahead and take the toe tap, group selected, hold down D and then V so it can snap. And I'm going to go and pull that over to the ball. So what means is that we can actually click on this group right here. If we rotate it, we can then rotate from the toe pivot, or from the heel, I'm sorry, from the ball joint. So that's going to give us a toe tapping action that we can perform. This one right here, the ankle, can move that. Directly under the ankle right here. So that will allow us to rotate the foot. And then what I can do is take the group for heel peel and toe tap and then group it under these two. Rename this heel pivot. So that will allow us to pivot the foot. Heel peel, I'm going to go ahead and put that group right here. And then once we have that, then we can start creating other groups. So we need, how many groups do we need? Peel. So this one's going to be the cigarette stomp. Actually, it could honestly be any of them, but we need, let's go and rename that. Let's just follow that. So it's going to be sig stomp. And then we'll move this actually further up. So instead of pivoting back here, it's going to be pivoting up here. And then we're going to move to, let's do outward roll, inward roll, a tippy toe, left foot, drop. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 more groups. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, go and drop them if you want. And this was, what was that one again? Oh, now it's just brighter. That's not good. All right, anyway, so with these groups made, we're going to go through and actually reposition their pivots. So foot drop, I'm actually going to go and put it right here at the ankle. So right there. So when it drops the entire foot. Tippy toe is going to be right here at the tip of the foot. Actually, you could put it like right up here if you wanted to, because maybe like he rolls up on the little curved portion. So something kind of like that. But if it's more like a human, it would probably be like, down here somewhere. But anyway, basically just be up on the tip. Inner roll is going to be right here. Outer roll. Okay. And we go through and check all these. So tippy toe works. Inner roll works. Outer roll works. Sig stomp works. And then the heel pivot, or the heel peel, got something mixed up here. Let's do let me check my other demo real quick. All right. So the heel peel is ankle by itself. Okay. So that's going to be that's right. I got to group this guy. Is that going to give it to me? Yes, there we go. Okay. So we can pull up the heel that way. Then we still got our toe tap, which is working. And then the ball, where does that one go again? Ball. Okay, that's how, yeah, that goes there. And then the toe tap goes under the heel pivot. Okay. There we go. There it is. Okay, so let's double check everything. Heel peel works. Toe tap works. Heel pivot works. And that group right here. So actually, I think that's just an extra group. Yeah, because that doesn't actually break anything. Okay. So cigarette stomp is good. Outer roll is good. Inner roll. Tippy toe. And foot drop. And I don't think I'm missing any. Okay. All right, so that's the basic setup for the groupings in order to get the reverse foot setup to actually work properly. If you had toes on a character, honestly what I usually would do is have joints. So this would go out like past the tip of the toe, but you could have a joint coming from basically here back to wherever the base of the toes are, and then basically create little individual joint systems or joint chains for each one of your toes if you were doing that. Did I just blow your mind? You just were like, whoa.
Like backwards joints?
Yeah, why not? Do you understand what I'm saying though?
Yes.
That's not a confident yes.
To like the best of my.
Okay, let me show you.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing, let's just say he has toes. He doesn't, but let's just say he does. He has a toe. So I ideally would like the toes to follow the rest of the reverse foot setup. I don't want them to break or miss out on like some sort of movement that's going on in that. So I would go in to the toe tip, create a joint, move it back here to wherever the base of the toe is, and then that would be my base joint. And then I could go in and create, let's say, a few more joints. So he's got these little guys, and then that would go under there. Okay, so because of the way that we set this up, where this actual joint goes into the chain, it still follows the rest of the foot. Now, if you were doing this and you did not join it into the toe tip, you may go, it looks like it should probably go into the ball joint, which makes sense. But the problem is if you go in and try to do a toe tap, you may miss out on that. Or if you try to do it from the ankle, you're going to miss out on some of the other systems. So I usually will try to go into the toe tip and just put in any toe joints that I'm going to have. And I'm kind of assured that it will follow along properly with everything else. And then you could go in if you want to do like FK joints or FK controls for each one of these. Then you can add it in and give them little flexible toes. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now granted, for this guy, he only has one curly backwards facing toe, so it's not really that big of a deal. If you wanted to add them in, that would be cool. That would not hurt your grade. It's got one eye and one toe. All right, let's go ahead and go to, my button's gone. Okay, let's get that rig 101 going. Okay. And I want to go ahead and make myself a foot controller. So let's do a circle. I'll move it over here. And circles are nice, but they're kind of boring. So I want something that actually looks like a foot. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the circle and deform it by the CVs. So something that kind of looks like a foot. What is that noise? Does that, do they honk that whenever they execute someone?
No,
No,
so they
it's for
should
the-
the guard.
Yeah.
Oh.
That would be really dark. That was a train this whole time.
That's a lot of people.
I used to hear that all
Every day.
I used to live by a lot of trains, so
Every time the train honks, someone dies. Stop tracking the train.
So I saw that it's gonna be a weird tangent for the recording, but I was watching a video on Reddit, and it had this video of this guy that was like watching this snake. He was at a train station, and the snake, I mean, like 5 feet long, something like that. And so the snake was like slithering along the train station, and then it like drops down onto the tracks, and then like it's going across the tracks, and there's like this train that's going down the tracks. And you would think that the snake would be smart enough to not try to go over tracks that a train is actively going over. It got his head chopped off. And snakes don't immediately die when they get their heads chopped off. It was very, very weird.
Wow.
Did not like that.
This sounds pretty tame for Reddit.
I mean, that's the only thing I could share with you.
Oh, okay.
Anything worse. I mean, there's other stuff, but I'm not going to share that with you. Okay, so I got the little foot controller made. I'm going to go ahead and freeze transformations. Go ahead and name it FootCon left. Fred FootCon left. And I'm going to go ahead and take basically this entire group right here and drag it under the foot controller. Okay? And so now everything follows the foot controller. Well, in order to do a tap dance, toe tap, tap toe? Tap dance? Yeah, tap dance. In order to do that, we need to actually put in our attributes in order for us to be able to control the reverse foot setup. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to Edit, Add Attribute, and we're just going to be putting in names. So we're going to do heel, peel. Let's make that a float with an open minimum maximum. Inner roll, outer roll, sig, stomp. What else do we have? Foot drop. Tippy toe. and toe tap. And heel pivot. Okay. Okay. All right, so we have all these attributes here. And so what we need to do is go ahead and start connecting these using what's called the connection editor. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the controller. Let's go to Windows, General Editors, Connection Editor, right here. And so we're going to do inputs. So we have two sides of this, inputs and outputs. So this is kind of similar to the set-driven keys, where we had something that was driving something else. So it's basically just a one-way street. And so we need to have the inputs, or the from to the to, inputs and outputs set up properly. So we're going to be having an output value that's going to be coming in from the controller, or coming out. Let me rephrase that. An output is going to be a value coming out of the controller into the X, Y, or Z axis for a specific group. Okay? Specifically, the rotate X, Y, or Z. Now, depending on what you're trying to set up, you could do a controller that controls translations, rotations, scales of various objects. So this has a lot of really interesting abilities that you can kind of set up if you just kind of take the time and play around with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's roll down here to heel peel. And so that is going to need to do an input into the heel peel group. And so I'm going to select the heel peel group right here, click on reload right. And so that's going to give me all the attributes that I can basically connect into with for this heel peel group. And so what I need to do is basically find the rotates. And so if I go down, I have rotate order. That actually needs to be rotate. So I'm going to click on the plus button right here. And that gives us rotate X, Y, and Z. So the heel peel, if we kind of play around this for a second, it's basically just going to be rotating on one axis right here. And so that specifically is going to be the rotate X axis. If you did something where you were kind of rotating the heel, but like the ball of the foot was staying in place, then you might want to do the Y axis or a Z axis. But specifically for the heel peel, this is going to have to be the X axis. Okay? So we want to make sure that heel peel is selected. Rotate X. You'll see that this goes italics, meaning there's a connection. Rotate X on the heel peel group is going to turn yellow, meaning it has an incoming connection from something else. So we are now connected. If you ever want to undo this, you can just click on the rotate X again, and it will disconnect it. Okay? So if it's not italicized, it means it's not connected. If it is italicized, it means it is connected to something. You with me? Okay. So let's go and do interroll. So I'm going to select interroll, and then what group do I need to select to finish the interroll controls? Hey, back up there. If I do rotate Z, that's going to be rotating the heel peel group on the Z axis. I don't necessarily want that.
Okay, select
So it's interroll. So which group do I need to select? Interroll. The wonders of using names. So let's go ahead and click on interroll. I need to click on rotate right, or reload right. So that's going to reload everything. I'm going to go down to where in order to connect this. Rotate plus sign. Okay. So let's find out what axis we're going to be rotating the inner roll on. So if I want him to rotate like that, I could do that. But usually inner roll and outer rolls are going to be kind of on the z-axis like that. So let's do a z connection. All right. Let's do foot drop. Actually, let's go back to the controller. So heel peel, inner roll. Let's do outer roll. So we're just going to go down this list. So it's going to be outer roll. So what group do I need to click on? What?
The outer one.
Outer roll. Okay, so out roll. Then what?
Reload right.
Mm-hmm. Then what?
Click the plus sign with the
Okay. What axis do you think I'm going to need to do an outer roll on? Z? Let's double check that. Yes. Okay. Sig stomp.
Six sign.
Okay. So it's going to be like that. So that's going to be which axis?
Why?
Y. All right. Okay. Foot drop. What axis? Yep, X. Okay. Tippy toe is going to be tippy toe group. X-axis. Okay. And then toe tap. Probably X again. Yep. Okay. And then heel pivot. I'm guessing it's probably going to be Y. Yeah, it's going to be Y. Rotate Y. All right, I think that's it. So let's check everything. So let's go to the attributes and go ahead and check out the heel peel. That works. Inner roll works. Outer roll. Looks like it's working. Cigarette stomp. Looks good. Foot drop looks good. Tippy toe looks good. Toe tap looks good. Heel pivot works. All right. Last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create a little controller for the knee direction. So I'm going to go and grab, I'm going to do a little arrow right here. Snap it up to the knee, and I'm just going to move it forward. And then what do I need to do? So let's go ahead and go to modify, freeze transformations. Now for the history, it's just going to be delete by type, exactly.
For the love of God, did not delete all of
Are you just quoting me, or
Yeah.
did you do that?
No, please.
Okay.
So I was like, that's the one thing I was making sure.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this arrow. Let's go and give it a name. And let's go ahead and grab the IK handle that's going to be attached to. Which constraint was it again? You guys remember?
The pole vector.
Yeah.
Pull and
It's pole vector.
yeah.
So then I can go and take this and move that knee around.
And is like that the pull vector constraint, like the only constraint that'll work with this handle?
That's basically what it's for.
Okay.
Yeah. That's, let me rephrase that. I'm sure there is other uses for it, but every single use case I've ever seen for a pole vector is almost always with an IK handle. So I'm sure there's riggers out there who are much more talented than I am that use it for other things, but that's what I use it for. That's what I've seen it used for. So, alrighty. So that is a functional, workable reverse foot setup. So then you just got to basically copy everything over and just do it again on the other side. Luckily, we should be able to duplicate and mirror the foot controller over. However, all the IK stuff that we set up and all the foot groups, that's going to be done manually again. Okay? All right, any questions about what we've done so far? Yes, ma'am.
It's not really a question, I guess, but like, because, like, we wouldn't need to do this for a ribbon joint because the ribbon joint already has influence going all throughout it, right? And then
I mean, you could. You could do this for a ribbon, but it would be, I mean, you would basically, here, let me show you what happens if we do it with something kind of like a ribbon. So if we did a series of joints, so more than just 3, so if we did like a single chain solver, you could still have the ribbon set up with control joints the way we would have done it before. But then if you did an IK from one end to the other, it'll give you that kind of movement, which is, I mean, that's usable. Like, that's something you could function with, because if you're wanting to do, you know, a dude with like a really long neck like this guy, it kind of would make sense that you'd want to just grab the head and move it. And that's totally usable, for sure. We do have what's called a create IK spline handle, which actually runs a curve through, or threads it through the joints, which then the curve itself actually controls where the joint positions are, or the joint chain. So that's been used for like tentacles and necks and things like that. It's not as, to me, in my opinion, it's not as usable as the ribbon, because the ribbon controls rotations and stretchiness really, really well. So like if I go and take this guy, and then if I do the, where is it? Create ribbon handle, or IK spline handle, there we go. So you'll see it looks basically the same as before, but now when I click on the IK handle, actually I can't really move it, but you still have that same bow. But what's different is I have this curve now. And so it's actually creating points at each one of these joints right here. And then if I go and grab the control vertices, if I can see them. Kind of weird. Only gives me. It looks like it's only one control vertex. Where's the other one?
And then there's also one kind of like in the middle, closer towards the one to the left. Move your up right there.
There it is. Okay. All right. So anyway, let me bring back those joints. Okay. So if I go and move one of these control vertices, you'll see it kind of gives us some really interesting deformations. So this is kind of cool, and this is something that would allow you to do like a dynamic joint chain. If you have like rope or something like that, you can basically skin rope to this curve because you have a joint chain that's attached to it. But then you can also like do this for a neck, and then you can create controllers that are attached actually to the CVs. And so then that kind of controls, like, if the neck is, like, say if the head's here, but then the neck is, like, moving underneath it, that could be really interesting to see. So, you know, it has its use. One of the nice things, kind of nice thing, is it doesn't necessarily, there is no squash or stretch to it. So if I move out this CV, it doesn't actually stretch out the joint chain. It just straightens it out. And that would be good, like if you wanted to have something that just doesn't have that kind of deformation to it. So that's useful. But my downside is that it doesn't do the rotation as easily. Now we can put rotation in it where, you know, if one of these points rotates, it can actually cause the joints to rotate. But in my opinion, it's just way easier to go with like a ribbon. So I like them a little bit more anyways. So yeah. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So that's your assignment. Rig this guy. Give him a reverse foot setup for both of his legs. Give him a ribbon spine for the neck. And give him FK controls for the tail. Mouth control here. He has to be able to look around, so eye controls. I'll leave it up to you to do whatever you want with the tentacles on the head. I need to be able to move them somehow. So you can do it however you want. Just simple FK joints if you want to. That's cool. Or something more advanced. All right? All right, so that's it. I'm going to go ahead and halt the video today.